What makes a saint a saint? Well, today I remember my Grandma Irmgard. She was so fully alive in her younger years, and I always saw her together with Grandpa Walter. And they had done traveling, and they were all over the place, just living fully and joyfully. And some of my favorite pictures that I've seen, because I don't remember, is her holding me and just being held. Very precious. But something happened when Grandpa died, just of a heart attack, just totally unexpectedly. Grandma was never the same, and for the rest of her life, she had been grieving. Now, today, we may think like that may have been mixed together with depression and anxiety and her not being able to find her way out. But she was still the loving person, the kind person to help, to hold, and to support. But there was something underneath, a darkness or a grayness that stayed with her. But what I remember, what carried her through it, was her morning devotions, her evening prayers, and her faithfulness to go to Bible study. I think that's what carried her through the years. Because in and through all the darkness, in and through all the loss, she experienced in community and in her devotion, her heart's connection with the living God, with the Spirit, that she was not by herself. She was not alone in that darkness, in that grieving. What makes a saint a saint? When we think of the saints, the great saints like St. Francis or St. Teresa or all the people, we may have forgotten through the years that there was also a brokenness in them, a limitations, a place where they had to open up and rely on the living one to carry them through. So sometimes we paint the saints in the too bright light. There was a humanity, a suffering St. Francis. There was the brokenness of St. Teresa of Avila. Yet, they lived in and through their struggles open to become a vessel, an instrument. I love that prayer of St. Francis, even if we know that it doesn't go back literally to St. Francis, but I think it carries his message so beautifully. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. What does it take to do that? Well, first of all, opening up and bringing the restless, the worrisome, the places where we're not at peace with ourselves, open up and bring them to the living one. Because we cannot bring peace to others unless we become peaceful and at peace with ourselves, opening up and letting the Spirit work in us. So, what makes a saint a saint? Maybe they're recognizing of their own limitations and opening up to the living one and recognizing that in our humanity, we all participate in that humanness, in that reality, in that brokenness. Now, I love the message and the quote from Philo of Alexandria. He said, just be kind, be careful, be considerate, because every person you meet, they're dealing with something in their lives. And sometimes we think like, our lives should be like the advertisements. You know, you don't live a good life if your life doesn't reflect what you see in advertisements. Well, how wrong is that? What a wrong reality. I think We all struggle, we all feel pain, we're all grieving in one way or another. It's just human reality. The question is, what do we do with that? And to me, the message of Hebrews, where we heard what we just heard, is that we're not just by ourselves in that race, in that struggle. But for me, and that's where the rubber hits the road, is that Jesus has been in and through that, and Jesus promised to be with us in and through our struggles. So, Jesus in the garden, wrestling, not knowing, being torn, really not knowing what should I do? Jesus on the cross feeling totally abandoned. Why did you abandon me, living God? Why? You hear the question, why? Why? And there is no answer to Jesus' question, why, on the cross. It takes 3 days until there is new light and new life and resurrection. Well, for some of us, 3 days may take 3 years or 30 years, or who knows how long. My grandma, this bittersweetness or this melancholia, whatever you describe it, that found expression in her way. When she played the piano, you could hear it in the tunes. It was a deeper connection. Now, what makes a saint a saint? 2 people I want to lift up to you. One is Elie Wiesel. He survived the concentration camp in Germany. And that changed him. That changed him to a place where he said, never ever be silent when you see injustice happening. Now, I'm paraphrasing. Because when you're silent, always silence favors the oppressor and never the oppressed. So when we see someone suffering, when we see people hurting, the people who are vulnerable, the people who do not have food stamps, the people who just need help, being silent, it's almost like being complicit. Because many things that are unjust, many things that are just not good happen because many, many good people do not do enough or keep silent. Or the other person I want to lift up is Mary, the mother of Jesus. Unwed teenager having a baby. Having to run together with Joseph for their life, refugees. Coming back, looking up at her baby, her son, being crucified. And then one of my favorite artworks, the Pietà, Mary holding the body of her loving baby in her arms. What makes a saint a saint? And who are your saints? Who are your heroes? Who are your role models? Who loved you, who held you, who lifted you up, who cheered you on, to whom you look up and whom you try to embody? Who are they? Your saints. We do a special thing today. 2 minutes. Silence. I often experience silence as very interesting. Sometimes people describe it, it's like a glass of muddy water. It's all stirred up. And it takes time for it to settle, doesn't it? So we find more clarity. And we had this morning a special presentation on Quakerism. So this is what our sisters and brothers in the Quaker tradition do. 2 minutes. Let's pay attention to the inner light, to the saints who hold us still, and to the people whom we may hold.